And this week it goes to Robert Reich, and I think we've covered his insanity a few times before. I was going to give it to him for his bogus pro-minimum wage statements, but really it's stuff we've all covered before. There's nothing new there. And I found something he wrote on his blog that was even worse. He called it, What to Do About Disloyal Corporations. And what is a disloyal corporation, I hear you ask? Well, you know how statists always justify taxation by saying it isn't forced because if you don't want to pay them, you can just leave. Well, a disloyal corporation is one that leaves the United States to avoid paying taxes.
And I love the fact that people say, oh, we need more taxes. But when you see majority of the taxes don't go to the places that you would usually go. They usually go to corporate bailouts. It usually goes to all these other places that you might not want. I mean, most of the stuff I feel I pay my taxes on is like for the military or bailouts. I feel like, hey, I don't want any of my money going to those things, but nope, I can't say no to that.
And Reich, of course, has been one of the biggest voices for increasing taxes on the rich and corporations, and he's acted all chagrined that they've started leaving the country. Quote, just like that, Pfizer has decided it's no longer American. It plans to link up with Ireland's Allergan and move its corporate headquarters from New York to Ireland. That way it will pay less tax. Ireland's tax rate is less than half that of the United States. Ian Reid, Pfizer's chief executive, told the Wall Street Journal the higher tax rate in the United States caused Pfizer to compete, quote, with one hand tied behind our back.
Yeah.
Reid said he'd tried to lobby Congress to reduce the corporate tax rate, now 35%, highest in the world, by the way, but failed, so Pfizer is leaving.
Mm-hmm. I always say it's not how much money we get from taxes, it's about how we spend it. Instead of all like saying these boondoggles or the waste of the war on drugs with $1 trillion, these billions of dollars we lose in these war on terror. I mean, I'm still not over. I mean, most people seem to have forgotten that when we were still in Iraq, well, then we're still in Iraq, is that we lost, remember that story like a couple years ago where they actually lost $6 billion? Then you have Afghanistan, you have all this money wasted on these buildings and gas stations.
But it's not enough. We cut to the bone. We have to raise the debt ceiling because there's just no other place we can cut.
Again, it's never, no one's going to make that big call, that big sacrifice. We are the ones who have to tighten our belts. Congress and all those guys, they never do. They never do. The ruling elite, when I keep saying this, they're not representatives. They are the lords and ladies. And the worst thing about it is people want to give them even more power. Like, well, they're incompetent. So what we're going to do? We're going to give them more money and more power. That's the way we're going to get our things done. Wait.
So he said, quote, such corporate desertions from the United States, technically called tax inversions, will cost the rest of us taxpayers some $19.5 billion over the next decade. So it's not their money, it's the government's money, and they're taking it from us.
I understand, again, I'm the lone person here who I think that there should be some type of government, but the majority of that money should be going for simple projects like roads. But if you look where all the money goes, it goes into like these boondoggles, these wars that go forever. They go into these programs that in the end do not help. They injure this country's wealth. And there's no real positive stuff. And all the positive stuff that does get, like, how about this positive thing that does? It gets barely even enough funding to even survive. Well, maybe if you start saying, hey, maybe we should start cutting real cuts, then I think we'll actually have a lot more money spread around for these businesses and such. But that's just my personal thing.
So he talks about people who want to, quote, eliminate the corporate income tax altogether. Why this would save the Treasury more money than further corporate tax inversions is unclear. And, I mean, it's not really about that. I've covered this before. If you want to tax the profits that people are reaping from these corporations, then you want the capital gains tax. The only other places the corporate tax money can come from is either it'll result in higher prices, it'll result in fewer jobs or less pay for workers, or, more likely, it's going to come out of reinvestment, which means that businesses aren't expanding, they're not creating new jobs, and they're not making things even cheaper for the rest of us. So how is that anything good?
Yeah, and more often than not, these huge like business regulations and all this stuff, probably the main supporter are these big businesses. They don't want any type of competition. It's just, it's too hard. We can't really compete. And once you have these other countries, which are like, hey, we're not going to charge you this much money, they're moving. And less businesses they'll have no jobs and everything else. And then you go like, oh, guys, we need more money. So you're going to have to keep raising taxes and more businesses are going to leave. And next, we're going to be like Venezuela. We're all going to be eating rocks.
Yeah. Yeah, and he keeps going on about Pfizer's patents. And notice that nowhere in this screed is a proposal to actually fix the patent system or increase the ability of the free market to act in the medical industry or anything like that. Nope. It's just because Pfizer's going away, that means that they're stealing money from the poor government, which can just print as much as it needs to anyway. And he says, quote, by deserting America, Pfizer relinquishes its right to influence American politics, even though all of the same patent protections and everything else apply to foreign corporations too. So basically he's saying that if you start off in America and then leave, you deserve less rights than if you never were in America to begin with. It's about punishment, nothing more.
It's petty. That's what it is. It's petty and selfish. And the most sad part is people really believe that the government's money, majority of this money, it's coming to the government. That means it's coming to me. It's not. It's going to go to, the lobbyists, Wall Streets, You're not going to see most of that money. If you do see that money, it's going to be a little, like a scrape or two. Maybe a little breadcrumb. It's not coming to us, man. This never does. Yeah,
this is the kind of thing I'd expect from Donald Trump.
And yeah, here's the crazy thing. Donald Trump's plan is actually to reduce the corporate tax rate to 15%, actually. He says, by company and Ted Cruz wants to eliminate the corporate tax altogether, which personally, maybe we should reduce it to maybe...
but it's like I said, we don't need it. We don't need it. It's the only thing it's going to do is cause harm. If you want to tax the rich more, then do the capital gains tax. All the corporate income tax is going to do is just take money out of your pocket and mine in the forms of lower pay, higher prices, fewer jobs, stuff like that.
And you think that maybe if we have all this money, the government makes all this money, why is this poverty is still really high in this country, mostly in African American? I mean, why are we still in this recession? Why, if they're making all this money, why are we still in this huge recession right now? Because
government doesn't make money. It just takes it from other people.
I sometimes feel like it's just one big Ponzi scheme, and we are probably the biggest jokes. And that's probably, again, why there are no aliens that come out looking at us. We're trying to look at us like a big reality show, saying that, probably laughing at us right now. Just like saying you give money to an organization that takes away your rights, abuses its citizens, most of your infrastructure and such, and yet you defend this organization, you still give it your patronage, you still do all these things while it continues to hurt you. And you say you're the most smartest and dominant species on your planet?
Yeah, I mean, this is just one more fetid, putrid example of how, if you don't like paying taxes, you could just leave. It's just another pathetic excuse by people who have no rational basis whatsoever for their opinions.
Yeah, look at our history. Our history is shown like people like from Martin Luther King to Harriet Tubman to all these people who rose up against the government and such. They were fighting against the laws. They were fighting against authority. I mean, that was our country's, we rise against authority. We should not be placating to it. I feel like that's a bit lost. And we ostracize people who actually rise against the authority. It just seems odd to me. Am I crazy saying? Because we reverence people who, we reverence people who stick it to authority. But at the end of the day, the majority of people in this country, we side more with the authority, and we abuse the people who actually seem to be sticking up to it.